The millionaire widower's twin daughters hadn't been getting any sleep at all. Then the new African-American caregiver arrived and did something that transformed everything. That woman is sedating those children. The accusation from Gloria, the housekeeper, rang out through the refined hallway of the Whitmore estate like a thunderclap. Mr. James, it's impossible for two kids who stayed awake all night to suddenly be sleeping like little angels. She's doing something unlawful to those babies. Keisha Williams, just 28 years old, remained perfectly still in the middle of the marble corridor, observing the 60-year-old housekeeper gesturing wildly before her boss. These allegations didn't catch her off guard. She had actually anticipated this exact moment 3 weeks ago when she accepted the position caring for the 4-year-old twins who had driven 6 nannies away over 6 months. James Whitmore, property development tycoon and grief-stricken widower, glanced back and forth between his longtime housekeeper and the young black nanny, who had turned his house from a place of endless crying into a sanctuary of calm. For the first time since his wife's passing, his daughters Ruby and Rose were sleeping a full 8 hours each night. "Gloria, these are extremely serious claims," he said quietly, visibly uncomfortable with the tension. "Serious? Mr. James." This woman showed up here from Detroit's outskirts without any decent references. Gloria spat the words like venom, and suddenly our girls, who scream from nightmares every single night, are sleeping peacefully? Something is definitely not right. Keisha drew a slow breath, her gaze briefly connecting with James. There was something in that glance. It wasn't simply appreciation for the tranquility she brought to the household, but genuine interest in understanding who she truly was. Why would someone with her sophisticated education and remarkable knowledge of child development accept a position that made other caregivers flee in tears? "If you're determined to examine my techniques," Keisha said with composure that made Gloria pause momentarily, "I recommend we set up cameras in the girls' bedroom. That way, everyone can observe precisely what occurs during the nighttime hours." The proposal caught everyone off guard. Someone with guilt would never request additional monitoring. James studied the nanny's peaceful expression with a frown. There was something about her bearing, an unwavering confidence that didn't match a simple childcare provider. During recent days, he'd observed unusual details. Keisha spoke 3 languages with fluency, referenced child neuroscience research with scholarly accuracy, and possessed a commanding presence that made even distinguished guests value her insights about the children. 3 weeks before, when the employment service had contacted him offering her services, he'd been at his wit's end. 6 caregivers had resigned in under 2 months. Ruby and Rose, devastated by their mother's unexpected death in an automobile crash, spent their nights yelling, weeping, and refusing sleep. The entire household was in a state of complete exhaustion. Gloria had always voiced her views clearly regarding those types of people caring for children from respectable families. But when Keisha appeared that first evening, something shifted immediately. The twins, typically suspicious of newcomers, approached her with interest. And that initial night, a miracle, they slept 6 straight hours. "Cameras," Gloria stuttered, obviously not anticipating that response. "Why, that's unnecessary," she would just... "Actually," Keisha interrupted, retrieving her phone from her pocket, "I've already filmed some of our evening routines to track the girls' development. Would you care to watch?" There was complete silence. James detected a subtle shift in Gloria's demeanor, from defiance to something resembling fear. There in the center of that hallway, where generations of wealthy families had made choices about their staff's futures, Keisha stood resolute, protecting secrets too significant to reveal before the proper moment. If this tale of prejudice masked as concern has moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what unfolded next would demonstrate that underestimating people based on their appearance can be life's greatest error. Gloria wasn't prepared to surrender. During her 15 years serving the Whitmore family, she'd established a reputation for unwavering loyalty, and she wouldn't permit an opportunist to threaten her privileged status in the house. "Mr. James, you must understand what's happening here," she persisted, moving toward the window overlooking the garden where Ruby and Rose were playing for the first time in months. "This woman appears from nowhere, without proper recommendations from respectable families, and suddenly possesses magical abilities with children? Please. James observed his daughters running freely across the grass, their laughter ringing out for the first time since their mother's funeral. The transformation was undeniable. They were eating regularly, sleeping 8 hours nightly, and had even returned to preschool without anxiety attacks. Gloria, perhaps you're overreacting. The girls are being manipulated. The housekeeper cut him off, her voice climbing higher. And you can't see it because you're desperate for answers. But I recognize her kind. They arrive humbly, create temporary miracles, then begin requesting favors. First a raise, then expensive presents for their families, then access to your bank accounts. Keisha stood motionless, observing Gloria's theatrical display with a calm expression that only frustrated the housekeeper further. This reaction was precisely what she'd expected from day one. 3 weeks earlier, when she stepped off the bus at the corner near the Whitmore mansion, Keisha knew exactly what she was walking into. Growing up in Detroit as the daughter of a cleaning woman who worked for wealthy families, she'd witnessed the same pattern repeatedly. Established staff protecting their territory against newcomers, especially when those newcomers didn't match the expected image. What Gloria was unaware of was that Keisha Williams held a master's degree in child psychology from the University of Michigan, had served as a pediatric trauma specialist at 3 hospitals, and had accepted this position for very particular reasons that had nothing to do with financial need. You know what troubles me most? Gloria continued, now clearly losing her composure. It's her calmness. A normal person would be anxious being accused of drugging children, but look at her. She's standing there like she knows something we don't. James frowned. He had to acknowledge that Gloria's observation held some weight. Keisha did exhibit an almost unsettling confidence, like someone who was 3 moves ahead of everyone else. Actually, Keisha said softly, I do know something you don't. The silence was complete. Gloria grew slightly pale, as if she just summoned something she wasn't ready to confront. I know Ruby awakens at 2:30 a.m. because she dreams about falling, just like her mother did when the car flipped over. Keisha continued, her voice staying steady. I know Rose can't sleep until she verifies that all the doors are secured, because in her mind, the house hasn't been safe since Mom departed and never returned. James felt a chill race down his back. How could she know such precise details about his daughter's nightmares? He'd never shared the accident details with anyone, about how Amanda had been discovered. I also know, Keisha continued, now looking straight at Gloria, that you've been informing other nannies in the area that this family requires someone of equivalent social status to care for the girls. Very interesting messages in the elite domestic workers WhatsApp group, wouldn't you say? Gloria's face shifted from pale to crimson within seconds. How did you? I never. Oh, but you did. You even implied that I was probably here to deceive the lonely widower. That's a direct quote from your messages last Thursday. James turned slowly toward Gloria, disbelief spreading across his face. Is this accurate? The housekeeper stammered, clearly in panic. How did this woman access her private messages? And why did she seem to know exactly which nerve to strike? Keisha remained composed, but her eyes flashed with something Gloria finally recognized as danger. Here was a woman who not only knew her secrets, but had arrived prepared for this precise confrontation. The truth, Mr. Whitmore, is that I accepted this job because your family requires much more than just a nanny. And Gloria, she smiled gently, has been actively hindering any real progress in this household for much longer than you realize. For the first time since knowing the housekeeper, James saw genuine terror in her eyes. And for the first time since hiring Keisha, he began to suspect there was far more to this quiet woman than appeared on the surface. Every accusation Gloria made only seemed to strengthen something within Keisha, a quiet power that grew in direct relation to the injustice being attempted against her, as if each act of disrespect was fueling a plan far larger than anyone present could imagine. Do you want to learn the truth about what's happening in this house? Keisha asked, her voice maintaining that calm tone that was beginning to disturb even James. Then let's begin at the very start. She moved to the side table and retrieved a leather portfolio that James had never noticed before. Gloria, are you certain you want to proceed with these accusations? Because once I open this portfolio, there's no going back. The panic in the housekeeper's eyes was almost tangible now. Mr. James, she's trying to frighten us. This is exactly the kind of manipulative behavior I was discussing. But James watched, captivated by the transformation occurring before him. The woman he'd hired as a caregiver was revealing layers of complexity that completely challenged his assumptions. Keisha wasn't merely polite. She was tactical. She wasn't just capable, she was formidable. 3 weeks ago when I accepted this position, Keisha continued, opening the portfolio, it wasn't because I desperately needed employment. It was because I received a very intriguing call from someone you know well. She retrieved an audio recording from her phone. Dr. Patricia Coleman, the pediatrician who's been treating Ruby and Rose for 2 years. She contacted me after Gloria called to question my professional qualifications before I even began working here. James felt a chill run through him. Gloria, you called the girl's doctor? I just wanted to verify if she knew this person. Gloria stammered, realizing she'd walked into a trap she hadn't known existed. Keisha pressed play. Dr. Coleman's clear voice filled the room. Gloria, I need to inform you of something. Keisha Williams isn't just an ordinary nanny. She holds a master's degree in child psychology and specializes in pediatric trauma. When I learned she'd accepted the Whitmore position, I was fascinated. A professional of her caliber doesn't take domestic work out of desperation. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of children playing in the garden. James looked at Keisha as if seeing her for the first time. You have a master's degree? University of Michigan. I worked at Detroit Children's Hospital for 5 years before establishing my own child trauma clinic. Keisha smiled softly. The question, Mr. Whitmore, is why would a psychologist specializing in trauma close a successful practice to work as a nanny? Gloria was visibly panicking now. That doesn't make sense. If you're so qualified, why? Why did I take a job paying 1/10 of what I used to earn? Keisha completed the question. Because it wasn't about the money, Gloria. It was about justice. She pulled a series of documents from her briefcase. 6 months ago, James, you terminated an employee from your company for cultural incompatibility. Do you remember Marcus Johnson, the black engineer who designed your latest residential development? James frowned, clearly uncomfortable. Marcus, yes, there were some concerns. The concerns Gloria suggested to your human resources manager that employees like him might not align with the Whitmore image. Keisha placed the document on the table. Email dated March 3rd, copied to 5 board members. Gloria turned pale. How do you have access to internal company correspondence? Because Marcus Johnson is my younger brother. The revelation struck the room like a bomb. And when he told me about the systematic discrimination he endured here, I decided to personally investigate the family environment that fostered this kind of professional mindset. James sank heavily into an armchair, processing the information. His housekeeper, whom he'd trusted for 15 years, had actively interfered in business decisions based on racial bias. And the woman who was transforming his daughter's lives was the sister of the man he'd unjustly fired. Marcus lost his position 2 days before his 3rd child's birth. Keisha continued, her voice taking on controlled intensity. He spent 4 months unemployed, nearly lost his home, and his wife suffered postpartum depression without proper treatment because they lacked health insurance. I didn't know, James murmured, genuinely stunned. Of course you didn't. Gloria ensured you never discovered it. Keisha turned to the housekeeper. Because people like you work in the shadows, whispering poison into the ears of decision-makers, planting seeds of doubt about the competence of people you consider inappropriate. Gloria attempted one final desperate move. Mr. James, she's here to harm us. It's a trap. She orchestrated all of this. You're correct, Gloria. I orchestrated everything. Keisha smiled, but there was something dangerous in that smile. But not to harm anyone. I planned it to expose the truth about how prejudice operates in families like this, how it infiltrates everything from household decisions to corporate ones. She picked up her phone and displayed a series of messages. All of our conversations over the past 21 days have been recorded with legal consent. I informed you on my first day that I would be documenting my work for professional purposes. Every racial comment, every sabotage attempt, every time you try to interfere with my relationship with the children. James watched Gloria crumble before his eyes. The woman he respected as a cornerstone of his home had been systematically exposed as someone who operated from deep and dangerous prejudices. The twins are sleeping because they finally have someone who understands childhood trauma. Caring for them, Keisha said, not because they're being medicated, but because they're being treated by a qualified professional who recognizes the signs of unprocessed grief in young children. She closed the portfolio and looked directly at James. The question now is, what will you do with this information? Will you continue allowing people like Gloria to influence your decisions about employees and about your own daughters? At that moment, Ruby and Rose came running through the door, their cheeks flushed from playing. "Daddy, Keisha, we found a bird's nest in the oak tree." The children's radiant innocence contrasted sharply with the heavy tension in the air. Keisha knelt down to greet them, and James watched as his daughters embraced her with a confidence that had taken months to develop with any adult after their mother's death. For a moment, as he observed the scene, his daughters finally happy, the housekeeper he'd trusted exposed as prejudiced, and the woman who had rescued his family revealing herself as someone seeking justice for her own brother, James realized he was at the center of a lesson about how privilege and power can be used both to perpetuate injustice and to correct it. But what neither James nor Gloria knew yet was that Keisha had documented much more than conversations and messages. She had uncovered connections between Gloria's domestic discrimination and Whitmore's corporate practices that went far beyond her brother's case. Connections that, once revealed, would not only destroy a career, but potentially rewrite how the entire business elite of the city thought about social responsibility and the consequences of their prejudices. The twins' entrance momentarily eased the tension, but Keisha knew this was precisely the moment she'd been waiting for over weeks. "Ruby, Rose, how about showing Daddy and Gloria the drawing you made yesterday about our bedtime routine?" The girls ran excitedly to retrieve their drawings, leaving the three adults in heavy silence. Gloria seized the moment to attempt one last desperate attack. "Mr. James, she's even manipulating the children. This is evidence that—" "Gloria," Keisha interrupted gently, picking up her tablet. "Are you certain you want to continue? Because we still have 15 minutes of footage from Ruby's birthday party last month, when you told Mrs. Henderson that people like me shouldn't have access to children from traditional families." Gloria's face went from red to deathly white. The birthday party had been a significant social event, with at least 20 elite families present. If those recordings became public, I also have your messages to the premium executive Nanny's WhatsApp group, Keisha continued, scrolling through the screen, where you shared photos of me without permission, speculating about my true intentions with the family. James stepped closer, taking the tablet from Keisha's hands. His expression hardened as he read the messages. "Gloria, you shared photos of my daughter's nanny with strangers, discussing our private life. Mr. James, I was just being cautious." "Cautious?" James' voice rose an octave. "You violated my family's privacy, spread personal information, and even had the audacity to interfere in my business decisions based on racial prejudice." Keisha watched the dynamic with controlled satisfaction. She had planned each revelation carefully, knowing that James' pride as a father and businessman would be the most powerful weapon against Gloria's toxic influence. "But there's more," she said, opening another folder on her tablet. "Gloria, do you remember recommending the dismissal of 3 black employees from Whitmore in the past 2 years? Always with seemingly technical justifications." The silence was absolute. James looked at his housekeeper as if seeing her for the first time. Jennifer Watson, financial analyst, fired after Gloria suggested that people like her might not fit the company's conservative corporate culture. David Miller, architect, transferred to the least prestigious department after Gloria commented on his suitability for the clientele profile. And my brother Marcus, of course. "How do you have access to this internal information?" James asked, genuinely confused. Because after Marcus was fired, I began systematically investigating the termination patterns at your company. I discovered that Gloria was in regular contact with 5 people in your human resources department, always offering insights about employees based on observations she made during social events and family gatherings. Keisha showed him a detailed spreadsheet. Over the past 3 years, 16 Black or Latino employees have been fired or demoted from Whitmore Industries. In 60% of the cases, there was an email or phone call from Gloria in the files, always suggesting cultural concerns or questions about environmental fit. James sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. My God, Gloria, is this true? The housekeeper finally broke down. I just want to protect the family's reputation. People like her don't understand our values, our traditions, our values. James exploded. What values are those? Discrimination? Prejudice? Destroying the lives of competent people based on the color of their skin? At that moment, Ruby and Rose came running back with their drawings. Look, it's Keisha reading us a story, exclaimed Rose, showing a colorful drawing of a Black woman sitting between 2 children, all smiling. And here she is teaching us about the stars, added Ruby, showing another drawing where Keisha pointed to the starry sky, while the girls looked up in wonder. The innocence of the drawings contrasted brutally with the toxic reality that had been exposed in the room. James looked at his daughters, finally happy, finally sleeping well, finally confident, and realized the magnitude of the injustice he had allowed to flourish under his own roof. Gloria, he said, his voice now controlled but relentless, you're fired. I want you out of this house today. Mr. James, please. 15 years of service. 15 years influencing my decisions with prejudice, he corrected. 15 years sabotaging competent employees. 15 years poisoning the environment of my home and my company. Keisha picked up one last folder from her materials. James, there's one more thing you need to know. Gloria didn't just influence firings. She also blocked hirings. She showed him a series of resumes. 23 highly qualified candidates were rejected in the past 2 years after Gloria conducted informal checks on their families and backgrounds. Among them were 2 engineers with degrees from MIT, an award-winning architect, and an analyst with an MBA from Harvard. All Black or Latino, James noted, scanning the resumes, professionals who could have contributed significantly to the company. Exactly. Meanwhile, less qualified candidates who fit Gloria's right profile were hired at higher salaries and in better positions. Gloria made one last desperate attempt. Mr. James, she orchestrated this all. It's a conspiracy against me. Conspiracy? Keisha laughed softly. Gloria, it would be a conspiracy if I had invented your words, forged your emails, created your WhatsApp messages. All I did was document and organize your own actions. James turned to his daughters, who were watching the tension between the adults with confusion. Girls, how about we go out to the garden while the adults finish talking? When the children left, he faced Gloria one final time. You have 1 hour to pack your belongings. I don't want to see you on this property again. What about the company? Keisha asked. James took a deep breath. Tomorrow morning, I'll conduct a complete audit of the hiring and firing processes for the past 3 years. All affected employees will be contacted with offers of reinstatement or compensation. Gloria stumbled out of the room, completely defeated. 15 years of influence and power had crumbled in less than an hour in the face of documented evidence of discriminatory conduct. Keisha watched the housekeeper leave, feeling a deep but controlled satisfaction. It wasn't cruelty. It was pure justice, served with surgical precision. Why? James asked when they were alone. Why go to all this trouble, come here, care for my daughters, face all this prejudice, just to expose Gloria? Because injustice unchallenged is injustice perpetuated, Keisha replied simply. And because Ruby and Rose deserve to grow up in an environment where competence matters more than skin color. But there was one last revelation that neither James nor Gloria knew yet. a discovery Keisha had made about the true connections between Gloria's domestic discrimination and a much larger network of systematic exclusion that extended throughout the city's business elite. And that was about to transform not just one family, but an entire corporate culture based on unquestioned privilege. 6 months later, the transformation in the Whitmore twins' lives was only a small part of a much larger revolution that Keisha had quietly orchestrated. Marcus Johnson sat in his new office at Whitmore Industries, now as Director of Sustainable Development, a position created specifically to leverage his expertise in inclusive housing projects. The salary was 40% higher than his previous one, and he had received company shares as compensation for his months of unemployment. "I still can't believe my sister did all this," he told James during one of their weekly meetings, which now included discussions about corporate diversity. She planned every move for months. James smiled, looking out the window at the new community garden the company had created on the vacant lot next door, a project led by 3 of the employees who had been reinstated after the audit. "Your sister didn't just save my daughters. She saved my company from becoming obsolete in a world that no longer tolerates systematic discrimination." The full audit had revealed an even more extensive pattern than James had imagined. 23 employees were reinstated or compensated appropriately. 5 supervisors who had actively participated in the discriminatory practices were terminated. The company implemented a new blind hiring protocol, where resumes were evaluated without photos or names that could reveal ethnic origin. Gloria, for a part, discovered that 15 years of influence based on prejudice did not build a solid professional network. None of the elite families rehired her after Keisha's recordings circulated discreetly in the Nanny's WhatsApp groups. She was now working at a chain hotel, earning less than half of what she had earned at the Whitmore mansion. "The most impressive thing," James continued, "is that she never wanted to destroy anyone. She wanted to transform the system." Keisha had declined James' offer to become a permanent consultant for the company. Instead, she used her documented experience to start a consulting firm specializing in identifying and correcting institutional bias. Her first client was a Detroit hospital network facing lawsuits over racial discrimination in patient care. Ruby and Rose, now 5, attended a more diverse school that James had chosen specifically to broaden their world. Keisha still visited them twice a week, no longer as a nanny but as Aunt Keisha, the woman who had turned nightmares into peaceful dreams and taught them that families are built on love, not prejudice. "Daddy, is Aunt Keisha coming my birthday?" Rose asked over breakfast, wearing the star necklace she never took off. "Of course, Princess. And your Uncle Marcus, too," James replied, still surprised at how natural it felt to call Keisha's brother family. The true measure of Keisha's success wasn't in the impressive numbers of her consulting firm or the 23 employees she had helped get rehired at Whitmore Industries. It was in the call she received the week before from a young black mother in Chicago who had seen her interview on a social justice podcast. "My 6-year-old son is being discriminated against at school," the woman said. "The teachers say he's troubled, but I know he's smart. Can you help me document what's going on?" Keisha smiled, picking up a new notebook. "Let's start at the beginning. Tell me everything you've noticed. Because the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building bridges where there were walls, creating opportunities where there was exclusion, and turning pain into purpose." James Whitmore learned that privilege without awareness is a dangerous weapon, but privilege with purpose can rewrite entire histories. Gloria tried to use prejudice as power, but discovered that hatred always builds sandcastles. Keisha used intelligence as justice and built a legacy that will last for generations. If this story of transformation through courage has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, because sometimes change in the world starts with one person brave enough to document the truth and strategic enough to use it with surgical precision.